Welcome. You're watching Channel 9 in Fairfield Public Access Television. I'm Susan Kessel, and with me today is Joan Rodgers. We're doing another in a series for Hospice Month, and this is related to hospice care and Crossroads home care and hospice. Joan, you are specifically a social worker, and you work with the Crossroads.
That's right.
You're from Wayland.
Yes. I do have relatives around Fairfield, and I've worked in Mount Pleasant all my life, so I feel like that all of the area is somewhat community for me.
Kind of home. Well, there are lots of things that we're going to talk about life choices, and a lot of these things are things that maybe we should all think about, all talk about, because they're things that we don't talk about until you get in a position where you have to. And maybe it's easier sometimes to talk about before then.
That's right, and that's what I'd like to share today, and I'd like to open with a quote by Margaret Mead, and she says, "When a person is born, we rejoice, and when they're married, we jubilate, but when they die, we try to pretend nothing happened." And I think that's so true. We celebrate and plan for weddings and birthdays, graduations, retirements, all of these things, but we never plan for dying. We don't even talk about death and dying. And it would help. It's a very difficult time. And if we've talked about it beforehand, it really eases things for both the person that's dying and for the family and caregivers.
Right. I would think to know that things are taken care of, you have that less worry to even think about. And then if you're the caregiver or the family member, you're not worrying about that at all, and all your attention can go towards that person.
Spending the time together, whatever time you have together, you're able to spend it in relating rather than trying to figure out what to do in details and everything. And the thing, it was interesting, a nursing instructor said once that one of the first things she asked her nursing students was, "How many of you in here are dying?" And, everybody was just like, "Oh," but it is a fact, we all are, and none of us know at what point or when or how or anything. So it's not something that we need to direct to elderly people either. It's something that we should all be talking about at whatever age we are, to share our views, our values, what's important to us at the end of our lives.
And I'm sure we all have those thoughts, maybe keep them to ourselves, but we don't share them and we don't let others know what we would like done.
That's right. There was a study where they talked to people about their concerns in dying, and some of the main things that were brought out were fears of dying, or concerns were being in pain, being alone, and maybe not just alone right at the time of death, but through the dying process, feeling very alone, and losing control. And that's something we all like to be in control, and at the time of an illness, that is often a very difficult thing, is to feel like you're keeping control. And then another concern is people feel like they're a burden to others at the time that they're dying. So, people have fears, but we don't talk about them.
Right. And when do you have the opportunity to say, "Oh, when I get to that place, I want you to do this or that"?
Yeah, it's not something you just sit down and start talking about usually. And so finding a time, there may be a TV show that has some death or dying episode or something that you can just say, well, to your family member, well, I don't agree with the way they did that, or that's not how I feel. Or reading a newspaper article and say, I'd like for you to read this and see what you think. There's lots of things going on in the news and the world that are real
triggers
to talking about it.
Also, getting your driver's license, and you get to write on that little line or whatever, answer that question, yes, I would like to be an organ donor. I'm sure that you have to tell other people and make your thoughts, your wishes known.
Yeah, and just little things like that are an excellent time just to go ahead and have a discussion. The other thing with end of life, it's an ongoing discussion. It's not something that you talk about with your family today, and we'll talk here in a few minutes about some paperwork you can do, but you don't just take care of it and then put it aside and it's done. It's an ongoing process because your values, your outlook, your health, everything changes over time. And so how you feel today may not be the same a few years down the line. So if you can start talking about the subject now, and then as things evolve, you can talk about it some more.
I'm sure a lot of things are things that would stay the same.
Sometimes.
Some decisions.
Some decisions.
I know recently, having both of my parents in the hospital, I think it's automatic now that when you go in the hospital, you get a folder and they advance directives. Is that
That's right.
the correct? So everyone, when they go in the hospital, you get this folder with this information, and you go, "Oh, okay," and you look at it. But that's the time to think about it.
That's something that was a law that was mandated a few years ago, that every hospital, home care, hospice, nursing home, ask people when on admission if they have advanced directives. And there were people that did not want to do that, especially like to a young person. You know, a mom coming in to deliver a baby, they go, well, we don't want to ask her that. It was that idea that we're afraid to talk about it. And yet there was nothing wrong with, you know, saying, do you have this? And there's some literature about it and information. And maybe she didn't even need to look at it then, but at some point she had that. You know, in the technology that we have today, we can keep people alive almost indefinitely on different types of machines. And there are a multitude of treatments that people can go through to try to cure. And I'm not saying what's good and bad, what's right and wrong, because there isn't an answer to that. But people sometimes don't realize they have choices. And that's what our discussions are all about, is what do you want? Do you want to be on a ventilator? Do you want to have feeding tubes? These are all issues that people can take a look at and say. And you know, right now I would say something different than I probably will, you know, let's see, how old am I 30 years from now? I'll make this believable here. But there may be some things that you know you never want to. The other thing is that talking about end of life doesn't mean that if you do end up with an illness that you can't change your mind. It's just sharing information so that you are comfortable talking about it with people.
I was going to ask you something and it just slipped away. So how do you start as a social worker to initiate this discussion?
Well, with hospice, we talk about it on admission. And as has been talked about in previous sessions on hospice, part of the philosophy of hospice is that people are choosing that they have a terminal illness, and that they're choosing not to have any further curative treatment, or there is no more curative treatment available. And so that's already, we talk about that, but that's already established if they're going to go into hospice. But we start those conversations at that time. We also try to educate the community. We like to go out and talk with groups, because if you can make these decisions and talk about them before you get to the crisis.
That's what my question was, is how do we know we're making informed decisions?
I was reading, and it said that people often do not get the type of care they want at the end of life for two reasons. One is because they're afraid to speak up and say what they want. And second of all, they don't know what their options are.
Right.
They don't know that programs like hospice are available, or they don't know that there's this treatment or that treatment.
And so you can help, hospice can help make some of these informed, make you informed or family members informed in making these decisions. So they'll be the right ones.
There are times that we go talk to families and talk about what their options are and how things can be done, and they don't choose hospice. And that's fine. We're just delighted to be able to share information so that they can, as you said, be informed in making their decisions.
Now, what are some of these like a living will? What is living will?
Okay. The living will is a legal document that states the basic statement says, if I have a terminal condition and there is no hope of recovery, I do not want my life prolonged by artificial means. Now that's a pretty general statement, but basically that's saying that if I'm not going to recover, I'm not going to be able to get better, then I do not want to be hooked up to any type of life support. And so you can sign just a general statement like that at least gives your family and your doctor an idea of what you are wanting or not wanting. I do encourage people to go ahead and talk about specifics, and you can't plan for a specific situation
Right.
and foresee what's coming, but when you say no artificial means, or sometimes you'll hear the term, I don't want any heroic measures, well, what does that mean? You know, that could mean different things to different people. And the common things are ventilator and hydration, nutrition, like feeding tubes is a common one. I can't think
I
of
know what
saying.
you're trying to say, too.
Pacemakers and things to keep your heart beating. Those are all artificial ways that we can continue to live. But some of the things that are also considered life support are kidney dialysis, which people live on for years and years. But in some cases it can be considered life support. And even having surgeries or antibiotics and things at certain points could be considered life support or not. So you can talk about it. For me personally, I want pain medication. I want to be kept comfortable. For some people, because of their beliefs, their understanding, their values, whatever, they don't want to be medicated. They just want everything to happen very naturally. Antibiotics, if I'm already have a terminal illness, I may not want an antibiotic if I get a pneumonia, because it's not going to prolong my life that long. Some people want to be treated for that. And I think the important thing is there is no right or wrong, there's no good or bad, it's whatever you want. And that's something we try to stress with people.
And I can see where religious beliefs would influence different decisions by different people.
Very definitely.
That's probably a big one.
So when you're writing your living will, you can make this general statement, but you can also put some specifics in it, or more importantly, talk with your family and your physician and tell them how you feel. And then when the decision has to be made, they can say, well, you know, they said this one time, and so I know this is what they would want us to do. And these only take effect when you're not able to say what you want. So as long as you're able, then you can choose whatever treatments you want or don't want. But this is when you're not able to respond.
Okay. And what is durable power of attorney?
Okay.
What is that?
Okay, the durable power of attorney for health care is assigning someone to make decisions for you if you're not able.
Okay.
And this is something I really, really encourage people to do. This doesn't have to involve a terminal situation. You know, the living will only kicks in if it's been determined that you are not going to recover, you have a terminal illness, you have irreversible brain damage, something that you're not going to get better from, and you're not going to be able to tell us what you want. The durable power of attorney for health care, if you're in an accident and need a surgery and you're not with it at that point, this person can give that permission and they can go ahead. And many people say, oh, I don't need that, my husband or my adult child or
Can they sign? Is it?
They can sign, but anyone can contest that.
Okay.
So someone off the street who doesn't agree with the decision you made about your father could come in and contest that, even though you are next of kin and they aren't.
And I am durable power of attorney now. So.
Good. I'm glad you've taken care of that.
Yes.
So it is a good thing to have in place at any time.
It is, and sometimes it just makes it so much easier, because rather than explain to someone that's elderly and it's just so hard to understand, explain it to someone that cares and knows what their decision would be, and just to eliminate that whole process.
And as we've been talking about talking, I encourage people when they assign their durable power of attorney that this is a great time, again, to talk about what they want. So when that person is making decisions, they feel good about the decisions they're making. So the living will and the durable power of attorney for health care are very easy documents to take care of, and if you've just done this, you're probably aware of that. The Iowa, in every state is just a little bit different. These are federally recognized, but each state has their own process for advanced directives. But the Iowa Bar Association puts out a form that you can actually get one free if you write to the Bar Association and send them a self-addressed stamped envelope. They'll send you one. And this is just has the blanket, this has both on it. This has the blanket statement about living wills, and then it has the place that you can put your power of attorney for health care. And I should point out that this does not have anything to do with power of attorney for business or finances or anything like that. This is just for health care decisions. And some people say, oh, my son's had power of attorney for years, but when we look at the document,
It's not
for health care.
So they're two different things, and you can't use one for the other either way.
You can, sometimes they're incorporated all together, but it has to
Okay.
specifically list health care decision making also. And you can also put an alternative, and that's like, for myself, my husband is my power of attorney for health care, but if we're in a car accident together, I have an alternative. And that's something else. Right now, my alternative is my parents, because at the time we did these, my children were not of adult age yet. So, as I've told you, you need to keep these updated. I need to update, because now my children are adults, and it would probably be appropriate for them to be involved in decision making as much as my parents. So, as I said, these aren't something you fill out and put away and they're done forever. You need to take a look at them. This needs to be either notarized or it can be witnessed by two people. I don't recommend having family members witness, and healthcare workers cannot witness. But just some friends or neighbors that know when you sign your name that you're signing who you are, or you can take it someplace and have it notarized. So it's a very easy document to take care of. Another document that goes, it's the same thing, but it's called 5 Wishes, and it's put out by the Aging with Dignity, and it's advanced directives, but it goes through a lot of the things that we've talked about, and you can actually specify some of the things that you want or don't want. It gives you the opportunity to talk about your values and what's important to you at the end of life. You know, some people say, I only want to be at home when I die. And some people say, I really don't want to be in my home. And again, that's a personal decision, and this lets you write things like that down. And so then it is also a legal document recognized in Iowa. It has to be witnessed or notarized, just like the other one. But it's also a great tool to start talking.
And where can you get these?
Actually, we have quite a few in our office at Crossroads Home Care and Hospice, and we would be able to provide these to you. They're also available through the Aging with Dignity, and there are phone numbers and websites too, but I think you have to purchase them, and we do have some available. So we would be glad to
That's a really
share.
nice, just looking through that now, I can see that's
It's very
a lot of
like
good things to talk about with family members. So we're here once again, Joan Rodgers with the Hospice. She's a social worker, and we're talking about advanced directives. We've covered living wills, durable power of attorney, and a lot of choices that people are making and how to become informed. What else do we need to mention?
The one other thing I might mention is people hear the terminology "do not resuscitate."
Yes. What is that?
That's do not. The DNR order is do not resuscitate, and that is a specific directive that people do not want to have their heart started by cardiopulmonary resuscitation, electric shock, or anything like that, and they do not want to have to be intubated or to have a tube put down their stomach should their heart stop or they stop breathing. And this is kind of a hard topic. It's a little bit different than the living will, because the living will only takes effect when, again, you're terminal, have irreversible brain damage or something like that. The do not resuscitate order is more of an immediate thing. You know, if my heart stops, do I want you to try and resuscitate? And it's, again, something that may change over time. You know, most people would want to be resuscitated if possible.
I've heard this question asked, and I'm not sure what the answer should have been.
Again, there isn't an answer.
Okay.
It's whatever people feel. In our hospice, we will accept patients either way. Some hospices do require a do not resuscitate order. And when I say order, that's because the physician, he doesn't order it, but he approves it, he's aware of it. And in hospital settings, it is a written order from the doctor. If someone's in the hospital, he writes an order to do not resuscitate. In hospice, what we're thinking is you have a terminal illness, and if we resuscitate you and are able to bring you back, you still have a terminal illness. And so do you want that to be done? And that's, again, you know, a decision that we feel is up to the person, and we will honor whichever. With someone with a terminal illness, the chances of resuscitation being effective are minimal. I mean, it's
without other problems.
Yeah, with your other health problems, statistically it's very, very small, like less than 1% that are usually resuscitated and returned to the same level of functioning that they were at. So there are times, but that is something that is often asked in the hospital too. I don't know if that's something that you ran into with your parents, but it's a personal decision. We have persons, sometimes at just whatever point they're at in their life, they say, you know, I just don't want someone to do that. Sometimes it's a religious belief that they do or don't want it. So, but it is a term that you hear talked about, and so we'd like people to understand that.
Well, I can see that you have, you do perform a wonderful service here as a social worker, going to people when they have a lot of questions, important, very important questions that need to have answers in different ways that they can be answered. So this is a big job that you're doing with the hospice, and you have a lot of legal papers also to deal with. So is there anything else you'd like to mention?
No, I just thank you for the opportunity to share, and we'd be happy to talk, like I said, with individuals, groups, or anybody who would like to talk about end of life or hospice or anything. We'd be glad to share with them.
So we've been here once again doing our series for Hospice Month, and Joan Rodgers with Crossroads Hospice and Home Care. And thank you very much.
Thank you.